Ableton's return tracks have a secret use that's been sitting right under your nose this whole entire time. And today, we'll be creating some atmospheres with it. I'm willing to bet my pancreas that you haven't thought of using the return tracks in this way. I'm a type 1 diabetic anyways, so not much to lose. So, buckle up, because it's gonna get pretty experimental today. It's gonna be pretty fun, I can promise you that already. And just in case you don't know what return tracks even are, let me show you. So there's 3 different types of tracks enabled. You have audio tracks, MIDI tracks, and then return tracks. And when you make a new return track, a letter of the alphabet will be automatically assigned to it. So I just made a new return track and it has the letter A. And as you can see, all of my audio and MIDI tracks now have this little knob with the letter A under it. Or this little slider if you're in arrangement view. And if I turn this knob up, it will send the sound from this track to the return track. And since the return track is empty right now, it just doubled my audio. But it starts to be really useful once you start adding effects to the return tracks. For example, I put a reverb on return A. Just remember to set the dry wet to 100% here. And now if I want to add reverb to multiple elements in my track, instead of adding an instance of reverb to every single track separately, which by the way can get a little bit tough for the CPU to handle, I can add reverb by just turning this knob up. And that's cool and all that, it's a useful feature, but we can get much more crazy with it. Let me show you. So with this method, it literally doesn't matter what sound you start with. You can use anything. And since I'm very well known for creating bangers out of farts, here's proof, I might as well just start with this fart right here. Just to prove that you can indeed use anything. So I have 4 different return tracks here, and yeah, as I said, the sounds don't matter too much, but what really matters are the effects that you put on the return tracks. The results that you get are heavily dependent on the types of effects that you're gonna use, so I advise you to select them with intention. And in my case, I put a simple reverb on return A. It's generally useful to have a normal reverb, you'll see why in a minute. On return B, I put a different reverb with the pitch shifter pitching it up, which is useful if I decide that I want some higher frequencies in my atmosphere. And on return C, I have an echo and a shifter pitching it down, which, yeah, it's useful when I decide that I want some lower frequencies. And on return D, I have a grain delay. I recommend choosing at least one effect that has something to do with grains, because they make it really easy to get some textual sound, which is always nice. So now I'll turn up the send of the fart to one of the return tracks. And now look closely and you may see that the return tracks themselves also have knobs for sending signal to the return tracks. Thing is, they're disabled right now, so let's enable them all. And now we can send the return track to itself, so that it creates an infinite feedback loop. So now we can turn off the fart, so that we're left with just the feedback of the return track. But be careful, it's easy to mess up at this step. If you crank the knob too much, and your ears might start bleeding. But if you don't crank the knob enough, you might start to lose the signal. And you're gonna have to start again. You know, as long as there's just a little bit of sound going into the return tracks, we can keep the feedback loop going. Okay, now let's start recording it. And to do that, we need to add a new audio track, set it to get audio from the master channel, arm the track so it lights up red, and press record. It's important to start recording now, because here's where things start to get really interesting. Now you can turn these other knobs up, send the signal from return A to the others, and then you can have those sent to each other, and so on and so forth. You get the point. The sound will interact in some crazy ways with the different return tracks. Now I'm gonna jam a bit and see what comes of it. Now don't be afraid to play with the settings of the effects themselves. Everything that you do is going to be recorded, so you're definitely encouraged to go wild in here. See? I told you. I started with a fart and ended up with whatever this is. Pretty fucking cool, isn't it? But wait, there's more. Since we have this atmosphere in an audio file, we can do a couple of cool things with it. We can pitch it around, change its playback speed, or maybe change the warp mode to something crazy. But most importantly, I want you to apply a certain music production habit for this sample. It's something I talk about in this video. See you there, cowboy.